Right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Joanna Reed's here. I am here with Thomas R. Howell, and we are going to be talking about 5 things we are loving in books right now. And a couple of things about this topic. Thomas and I were just talking about this right beforehand, and actually, maybe while I'm just going to put on my do not disturb so I don't get any phone calls during this
Yes.
hour. But basically, the idea behind this is that I've had a couple of videos in past years where I've talked about 10 things I'm loving in books right now, and I tried to do 10 different things the second time I did this video concept, and tried to time it around Valentine's Day, so it's pertaining to the idea of love, but love with books. And I was talking with Thomas, and Thomas said, "Hey, let's go live and have a chat." And I'm like, "Okay." And so we decided to do it on my channel. I said, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we talk about 5 things we're loving in books right now?" And as I was just telling Thomas beforehand, I think it was just a perfect idea because Thomas is somebody who I consider very introspective and reflective of not only the books he's reading, but also how that's affecting his taste in books and where his taste is in the moment. Because I feel like, Thomas, you're always like a very in the moment person, really
Yes.
tuning in. Like, where am I right now? Am I in my fantasy mode right now, or am I in my Western mode right now? What's calling to me? What's resonating with me? So, you would agree with that, Thomas?
Yeah, I don't know. I like to read one book at a time, and I don't wanna, focus on the outside noise, just because I wanna give that book my time and attention, and I don't want to I don't wanna disrespect the work that the author has put in. Um, I just think it's important, and I feel if I'm bouncing from book to book, I'd be I don't know, I wouldn't be respecting the book.
Ah, I love that. Yeah. And right now you're currently reading Lonesome Dove, right?
Yes, I'm got little less or little like 200 pages left.
Yes.
So right here, there it is, 5 months
Wow.
and counting. Still reading
Ah,
it.
it's such an incredible book. I
Yeah,
love it. Yeah,
yeah.
so you're loving it too, right?
Yeah, it might be my favorite book of all time. I'll wait till it's done, but it has everything I want in a book. I was talking with Richard on, Two to Ramble. Uh, I think he and I are in agreement that it is a perfect book, and
Mm.
Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, he's like, "There's no such thing as a perfect book," but I just there's 2 perfect books I've read so far. That's, Last Unicorn and, uh, Lonesome Dove.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely adore Lonesome Dove. Fabulous book. Fabulous book. Incredible characters and dialogue. One of the best character written books I've ever read, I would say. Very atmospheric. It's also a very special book for me because when I was about around 9 or 10 years old, my father was watching the miniseries that was on
Mm,
TV, and I remember watching it at, like, 9 or 10 years old, and I remember connecting to it, and I still, to this day, remember the character of Gus
yeah,
and remember certain impactful scenes with that character.
yeah.
And my father had also read the book, and I told him I was reading the book a couple years ago, and he was so excited because he himself was a cattle rancher in Mexico. And so,
Whoa.
yeah, so he had stories of herding cattle, and he was telling me about this really scary story where this bull got all, I don't know, got all angry and freaked them out. But yeah, my dad was a cowboy for a short while, and
It's incredible.
so it's a every time I read Westerns, it's kind of like makes me feel connected to my dad, but
Yeah,
especially that one. And it's
uh,
just absolutely such an incredible book that even regardless of my personal history with that, I think it's just a phenomenal book
yeah,
in general. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, should I start with, like, my first thing on the 5 things?
Yes, we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. Just read this comment really quickly. I'm loving the flow state certain writers tend to take us in. I've noticed it in King and Sanderson of late. Oh, beautifully said. Yes.
Flow state. That's a good word.
Yes, it is, it is, because you can get lost just like a flow experience, you can certainly have a flow experience in reading. Actually, I have a whole video about that, but yes, let's go ahead and start with number 1. So what
Okay.
is your first thing that you're loving in reading right now?
I know you title it like right now, but it is something I've come to love over the past like 5 years of reading. Um, is multiple perspectives and POVs from
Mm.
characters. When an author is able to dip in and out of various characters and their minds and their perspectives, I think I love a good intimate book that's just from one character and their perspective. I think there's a time and place for that, and I'm not against that at all. I love those books. But there's something when an author does it right, where you're just going from character to character to character. Um, you see it in like Wheel of Time. There's 2,000 plus named characters in that. Yes, it's a lot, but it's fun to get, you just get a view, a peek of life, of the world in other characters in their shoes. Mainly in what I'm reading right now, Lonesome Dove, Larry McMurtry is able to just weave in and out seamlessly. I've never seen it done this well. It's never jarring, and the fact that he does it so seamless, eh, makes me just thankful for multiple perspectives and all these characters. If this story was only told from, maybe 1 or 2 perspectives, I'm only getting just a tad of that story. I'm only getting their view of the world, of these other characters. But we're going here, going to Newt, going to Gus and, Call and Lorena. Um, it makes for a living, breathing world, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, even just taking that example of Lonesome Dove, Lorena's motivations, her dreams are different than the dreams and goals and motivations of, for example, Gus and Call. So it does lead you into a richer exploration of not maybe not richer, I would say, but just different exploration of theme. So I agree with you. I think that there's something really special about that. And it's best ever. Don't you agree that whenever you could switch perspectives and you're just as interested and invested
Yes,
in that character as you were in the
yes.
character
I've
before?
never once felt, "Oh, I don't wanna be here, I wanna go back to Gus and Call." No, I'm
No.
I'm enthralled, I'm in it, I'm on the edge of my seat, I'm interested. These characters are so dang real. Um,
Yes.
and I've said that on many of my videos over, the months of reading this book that it just you wanna sit in their shoes for a little bit, and you
Mhm.
wanna hear their thoughts on certain things, and yeah,
Yeah.
I love that in
Yeah.
books, and I appreciate it when it's done really well.
Yes, absolutely. I love that as well. I love that as well. I think the most recent example I could think of for me was Robin Hobb's Life Ship Traders trilogy
Mm,
because it's multi-perspective and every single character I was completely invested in, every single one. Though she's such a magical author because now I'm reading her Tawny Man trilogy, going back to first person narration with Fitz. And I thought at first I wasn't sure I was going to be in for that because I was so into her third person multi POV. And now I'm just as into her first person narration. I don't know. She's a genius for being able to do that. But no, there's really something special about that, about being able to switch perspectives and make you just as invested to develop the character just as much. And yeah, Lonesome Dove. I see we have a lot of Lonesome Dove fans here too.
and
Sometimes
no
even the world.
spoilers, folks. I'm 200 pages left.
Yes, well,
Don't
we
ruin
love watching
anything.
your journey though, Thomas, and I agree with you. I think there's something special about how you were saying you feel like you're respecting the book by
Yeah,
giving it your time and attention in that specific way. And I love watching your journey with it, and I love that you're taking your time. In fact, Thomas, I know that you did a video recently where you even went into spoilers about your
no,
journey that far, and that was excellent. I loved hearing your spoiler-filled thoughts of
I
your
need
journey.
to do that more. I
Yes,
want to
please
do that
do.
more, and I think I'm going to take a book out of To Ramble, and how they structure their book reviews. I really enjoy that. I'm not gonna do the number thing. I don't like putting numbers on
Mhm.
book reviews. I like to base it off feeling.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I want to organize it and I want to provide spoiler free, but also spoilers. And yeah, I want to make sure I talk spoilers.
Oh,
So,
I'm with you on that. I think that's a beautiful way to structure a book review. I also agree with I personally am not into the number thing, but yeah, that's just different people, different tastes when it comes to
yeah,
that. Oh, I
yeah.
wanted to, I'm sorry, read this comment really quickly. Sometimes even the world itself can be like a character, and if done right, the atmosphere can be the main protagonist.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. And you could certainly see that in Lonesome Dove as well. Yes, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love Lonesome Dove. Well, I pretty much say that to everybody because
I think it's a
I think
book
it's
everyone
such a
needs to read.
it's so good.
I
Yeah.
don't like recommending books aside from maybe Last Unicorn, um, because they stand on their own 2 feet. You don't need anything else outside of that one book.
Mhm.
And yeah, Lonesome Dove is one that I'm just you got to read it.
Yeah. I think, like, the 2 things I would say, just to balance some of the hype for Lonesome Dove is that
Yes.
there is really heavy SA and racism in the story. There is the N word.
Yeah.
I know that that's been extremely off-putting for some readers who
Yeah.
didn't know that we were going that it was going to have happen in the story. Of course, it's pertaining to that time in history as well. But yeah, so just keep that in mind. I just want to add that as well. But otherwise, I think it is a very beloved book for good reason. Absolutely.
So
Excellent.
uh what's your thing? What's your
Yes,
number
yes.
5?
So, okay, I'll go with dual societies. I know this is gonna be a weird one, but hear me out. There are 3 books that come to mind that I absolutely love that do this really well. One of them is one of my favorite books of all time, which I just recently reread. This is called A
Mm,
Song for Arbonne by Guy Gabriel Kay. And in this book, we are exploring 2 societies. One that they call woman ruled Arbonne. It's not exactly a matriarchy, but it's a society that embraces women and also troubadours. It doesn't look down. It doesn't have quite the misogyny of the other society, which is Gorho. But what I love about it is that exploration of society, like looking at the sociological themes, yes, of the 2 different societies, 2 different atmospheres, 2 different landscapes, but also how the societal values affect the characters and how their identities are shaped by their society. And then specifically taking one of those characters from one place, pick, putting them in the other place, and then having them learn from their experience in the other place. And so I know this is kind of an unusual one to choose, but this is probably my favorite fantasy standalone of all time. I will say
it's
that.
standalone, very
Yes,
cool.
it's a standalone. Most of Guy Gabriel Kay's books are standalones,
Yeah, you
but
sent me
it's
one.
yes, I did. I sent you A Brightness Long Ago, and I
Yeah,
I do think you would love it.
yeah.
But yes, this is my favorite, and the first time I read it, I thought maybe it's because of my music background, because the way music is displayed so prominently in the story, but honestly, after my reread, I think, no, it goes beyond that. There is so much more to this book, and I'm going to be discussing it actually on Philip Chase's channel in March, so
Mm,
I'm very excited to get into that, but
yeah.
it's not the only book I love that does this. Another book that's also one of my favorite books of all time, certainly up there as one of my favorite science fiction books of all time, is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh, wow.
Now, I feel like Le Guin's science fiction doesn't always resonate for a lot of fantasy readers for whatever reason, but it works for me, as all I could say. And this book is dealing with the dual society as well. One on a planet called Eurus, one called Anaris. One is more anarchist, and the other one is more capitalist and more analogous to Earth, with warring nations and issues of patriarchy. So again, we have a character who comes from one of those places to the other place, and you see how again the societal values affect identity, but also how that affects the character when they're put from one place to another place and the questions that arise for them. I think this is an absolute incredible work. I have reread it. I want to read it again. I love this book. And then the third book example that see, this is a thing. This is a thing. It must be a thing for me. The third book that this comes up for me with is Midnight Tides by Stephen Erickson. This is book 5 in the Malazan Book of the
Mm,
Fallen. And it does the same thing. It takes a society that's very capitalistic, like it's called Letherus, and it takes another society, which is more of like a tribal, uh, mm, yeah, tribal culture, and it just shows you two different races, two different societies, how that affects identity, how that affects and there's also this ambiguity in all these books.
mhm,
Maybe A Song for a Bond, it's a little more distinct of the side that you're on, but all 3 books, I would say, they show that not any of those societies are perfect. Like, there's imperfection in
yeah,
both societies,
mhm.
and so it's making you grapple with moral questions and,
Yeah, like
again,
morally
social
gray stuff,
identity. Yeah.
black and white. Um, I love when, yeah, morally gray decisions or just things aren't cut and dry and, uh, just, "Oh, yeah, that's the clear answer. That's good, that's bad." Um, I also love, like, when there's multiple societies, um, especially when it's just 2, you see that contrast,
Mhm,
and that kind
mhm.
of, zooms in a little bit more, rather than just have 15 different kingdoms. Uh, but it also, builds the world and it makes it alive and feels lived in. Because if it's just, I don't know, every kingdom seems the same or every place seems the same, and I don't know, it feels
Yeah.
a little, one-dimensional.
Exactly, and so, yeah, I guess it goes back to what somebody was saying earlier about how sometimes the setting itself can be a character, and yeah, I appreciate when an author puts just as much nuance and dimension, as you were just saying, into the society, into even the location, the geographical elements, like, puts that much into it, and again, seeing how that affects us as people. Le Guin does this actually in a lot of her books, come to think of it, but yes, it's something that I guess I gravitate towards because these all the 3 of these books, like I said, they've all been favorites for me, and they all have that in common, and it's I love, again, fantasy that explores multiple societies and places,
Mhm.
like, I love A Song of Ice and Fire, for example, but there's something really special to me about just the dual exploration, and then one character going between the 2 that I don't
Mhm.
know what it is, it just speaks to me on some weird level that I love.
Yeah, I mean, it's I haven't seen it done like that. I mean, Wheel of Time a little bit, but more, I don't know, I feel like the cultures weren't as they were interesting, but I don't think they were as, like, lived in. I don't know. I have to think about it more, but yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of societies there, a
yeah,
lot, and, let's see, my next one is, mainly in from this one that I've noticed.
mhm.
My next thing that I love is the lack of foreshadowing.
Lack of foreshadowing, how interesting.
What I've noticed in Larry McMurtry's writing is he'll only provide, and I'm gonna put this in my book review of Lonesome Dove because
Mhm.
I mean, this is pretty much the only book I've been reading the past 5 months, so when you say like, "Hey, what are you loving in books right now?" It's like, "Well, I've only not even finished 1 book." But this is what I'm loving in Lonesome Dove is just the lack of foreshadowing where he's not leading you on. He's not giving you hints about what could happen. It's not your traditional, like, I don't know, Stephen King. He's really well known for that, but also he's good at it. Stephen King going, giving you a little bit of this, a little taste of the future of what might have already happened, and now you get to see it unravel and the chaos unfurl. But this, you're just in the world with the characters, and you're in their thoughts, you're in their mind, and you learn things as they learn things. You discover things as they discover things. And you're just as surprised as the character is. And I love that. And what I put here is, um, yeah, you're basically only navigating what's in their mind, not the outside. And you're navigating what they think of the current situation, um, what they fear or what they hope might happen, and that's their thoughts, not Larry McMurtry putting an omniscient viewpoint over the story. So then, yeah, you're never given uh, a hint of what will happen. It's what might happen, but that's only in the character's mind. And I think that's made this book stand out so much
Yes, I
above
love
anything
that.
I've
I've not heard that. I've never heard that highlighted before, and especially in that way. And I think that's so clever, uh, because it very much is like a discovery situation, a discovery reading experience.
yeah,
Would you say?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's unlike anything I've read, and how he's shifting from perspective to perspective, and how I wouldn't say Larry is keeping his cards close to his chest with the story, but it's just unfolding as life would. It's authentic. Um, it just feels real,
Mm,
which is I don't think any book has been able to do that.
that's wonderful. Yay. Absolutely. Cool. I'm gonna highlight some comments here
Yeah,
really
yeah.
quickly so I can catch up because I know I got a little bit behind. Bone Clocks is 4 for 4 in getting me invested in the POV character so far. Bone Clocks by David Mitchell is a banger of a book. I
Mm,
love that book. If you are a strong character-driven reader, that is your book. It is
okay.
not the most magnificent in terms of plot, in my
Mm,
opinion, but that's not why you read the Bone Clocks, you read it because of the characters,
mm,
and absolutely one of the best character written books I've ever read. So,
okay.
absolutely love it. Um, the book's so good, you don't wanna give want it to end is such a vibe, absolutely. So yeah, I think everybody's loving your channel and well, loving your channel because you
Oh,
have an
Mohammed,
amazing
how you
channel,
doing?
but also just loving that you are taking your time and savoring that experience so much and not wanting it to end, but really showing us you don't want it to end. So I think that's fantastic.
It could
Yeah.
become a little broken record thing, but I don't wanna rush through the book for the sake of getting a review out. It wouldn't be honest.
Yeah. Oh, I love this comment. The older the violin, the sweeter the music.
Yeah.
Yes. There is some truth to that because with violins, sometimes over time, it does become more like a wine that it seems to get richer over time, the wood, if I understand correctly. Which is, well, Stradivarius, as I know, are very famous, though. Those are there are other factors there. I love that. I have my great-grandfather's violin. Yay, fantastic. And I like it when books somehow merge certain ideas, tropes, and genres and mix them
Yeah.
together. Yeah, me too. Fantastic. And then I prefer the living in the earth like society makes for better books. What would there be to write about if you lived in a utopia? It would be awful. Well, I am curious about utopia. I know that in Le Guin's The Dispossessed, one of the moon-like planet is described as somewhat of a utopia, but I don't know if that's a misnomer or not because it is kind of also dystopian and has its own challenges and problems, but yeah, it's a really interesting question. Um, I was about to say that the genre shifts in books when done right is just hits so good, yep. Um, been really liking that recently. And then this one, I've been reading a few books, and one of them is Rebecca, which I'm loving for the slow unraveling of the character through
Mm.
subtle gestures. Oh, I love Rebecca. Fantastic
I don't
book.
know, I've never heard of it.
Rebecca by Du Maurier? Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It was written, I wanna say, in the 1930s. Somebody can correct
Okay.
me if I'm wrong about that. It's a Gothic book, like Gothic literature,
Mm,
but it's not like 18th century, 17th century Gothic where it's maybe a little bit thicker and harder to get into. I feel like it's a much more accessible type of read compared to those, but it is so atmospheric, so creepy. It's not when I say creepy, it's not a horror book, but it's got a vibe. It's got a good dark vibe about it. It's
okay,
fantastic. Highly
okay.
recommend. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. I also finished The Crying of the Lot 49 and Paranoia. The paranoia explored in that book is the mindset of someone who is trying to find meaning in a meaningless world. It was done brilliantly. Oh, really interesting to hear about that. Excellent. And let's see, I just read a novella last year that does something similar. Your Shadow Half Remains by Sunny Moraine. The world and events are seen through Riley's eyes and thoughts. Okay, good to know about that. Thank you. Yeah.
I
Um,
see this comment about Red Rising. Look at that. Everyone's telling me all of a sudden about Red Rising. That's popped up on my radar. Have you read that?
I have, yes,
And what
yes.
are your thoughts?
Well, before I say my thoughts, I'm gonna say hello, Tori's in the chat,
Oh, Tori
and
talks.
and
Nice.
Tori really should be your person to talk to about Red Rising because she's a huge fan of that
Okay.
series. It wasn't quite my thing.
Yeah.
It's very fast-paced. It's got a first person narration and it's I don't know. I'll say this though. I would say that it got better for me as it went along to a certain degree, but I didn't feel like it was totally my type of story.
Yeah.
But people love it, and if you want a super action-packed, fast-paced sci fantasy series, I think it's a good one. And yes, Tori, talk to Tori because Tori
Okay.
she has such good Red Rising thoughts. She's a huge fan of the series.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm going to highlight one more here, and I loved using the same motif over and over. The Dispossessed uses a divide between 2 points in space for the main character's research, 2 different societies and 2 different types. Yep.
Mm.
Love it so much. I just adore that book so much, David. Yeah. All right, so I guess we're on to my next one. My next
Yeah.
one's a little this one is harder for me to talk about in depth.
Mm.
So I'm gonna try to explain what I mean by this, and I mostly have 2 books that come to mind when I'm talking about it, but it has to do with contrasts, but contrasts with gradation. And in fact, it's interesting because Rebecca was mentioned earlier. I think I could point to Rebecca a little bit because the book is told from a nameless narrator. And she finds herself to be married to a widower of this grand estate, but she's of a lower social class. And so she's trying to fit into this role that she's not quite equipped to assume. And the harder part about assuming this role of being the lady of the Manderley estate where her husband resides, this massive estate with tons of servants, and it's extremely elaborate. The challenge of that is trying to also compare. She finds herself comparing herself to her husband's wife, who died before she came into the picture.
Mm.
His wife was named Rebecca. So that's
Mm.
who Rebecca is. Rebecca is actually a dead woman. When we start the book, we
Trying to
learn
tell
about
the shoes of
this.
Rebecca. Okay.
Yeah. So we learn about Rebecca, and how incredible she was and what a she was this social elite. She was vivacious. She was this, she was that. And so we do get a contrast between the nameless narrator that we're following and this woman named Rebecca, this person just put it on a pedestal. But there's like
Mm.
so much contrast between the two, but there's also a lot of nuance in how you understand these two characters. So that could be maybe one way of looking at contrast in a narrative. Another example, though, is a book that I recently read. It's a classic, a short classic called Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton.
Was
And
that the
this,
one with the like a winter snow? I just liked it because of the cover. I'm like, oh, that looks fun.
yes, and I love the cover because the
What's the
cover,
elevator pitch for that before you go back into contrast?
the elevator pitch for Ethan Frome.
Ethan Frome.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the elevator that's what I was about to give. So the elevator pitch of Ethan Frome. Okay, so we start it's funny because nameless narrator, I feel like I was almost gonna mention this as one of my 5 because I've read so many books recently with the nameless narrator. But basically, we meet this man named Ethan Frome at the beginning
Mhm.
of the book, and he's this broken man who walks with a gait, and he travels every day to this snowy town in Massachusetts. It's a fictional town, and this person wants to know about what happened to this man. What
Mm.
what what was this big smash up that happened to him in the past? Then we go into the past and we learn about Ethan Frome's past. And we learn that, and this is not a big spoiler because it's so early in the book, so forgive me, but we go into learning about how he's married to this woman who is mean spirited. She is not described as being very visually beautiful, and she's very harsh and severe and in her judgment towards him. And he's in love with her younger cousin, Maddie, her cousin named
Mm.
Maddie, who's this vivacious, beautiful, vibrant woman who's curious and wants to know about him and asks questions and wants to talk. And she's just very responsive. She's like the direct opposite of his wife. So we're looking at this contrast of character, but within the contrast of these characters, you have all of this interesting gradation. Like you just learn more and more about like the way mostly Edith Wharton describes them, even physically, or describes them personality wise. There, it's not just this and that. And I feel like there's so much more to the details that make them feel more fleshed out. And then she also puts the contrast, and I love that you brought up the cover because she brings that contrast even into the landscape. So you have the white
Mm.
snow and then the black brambly trees. And I feel like she's doing something very specific with those contrasts and what that means for the conflict that the character is experiencing throughout the story. It's not a very simple story in terms of like unrequited love or love triangle or whatever. There's so much more to it there. There's so
I
much
like
more
that.
about like human need and an exploration of that, especially as it's juxtaposed with poverty. So yeah, I love the book, but
A lot of books
I
are nowadays, you got the blurbs on the back of the book. It's just like, oh, love triangle, lovers to whatever, enemies to lovers, and it's like you're putting your book in a little box. You're not giving it enough credit. You're giving it just a one tagline thing where it's probably so much more. Or just back in the day, the books just had more depth, like you're saying. There's more beneath the surface than just this guy liking this cousin or whatnot.
Yes, yes. So I that's exactly it. And I feel like it's very similar to my first one, which was Dual Societies. But I guess maybe in this, I'm thinking more character. And one last example I'll give is one I recently read. It's also a very, very short novella, classic novella called Chess Story or The Royal Game. It has multiple titles depending on
Mm.
translation. And this is by Stefan Zweig. I had a wonderful discussion here on my channel a few weeks ago about it. But that, if you think about a chessboard, you have that contrast of the black pieces and the white pieces. And in the story, there is so much contrast, there is so much juxtaposition, but it's done in such a masterful way. It's so good. So there's something about that when an author plays with contrast and does it again, not only just in the obvious ways, but also with creating a lot of layers underneath those different dual aspects. So I love
Um,
contrast.
it's funny because I when I think of contrast, I think of prose and
Mm.
how, Patrick Rothfuss, Robin Hobb, uh, Peter S. Beagle, with maybe not the characters, but just how they try to paint this picture or paint an emotion or a feeling, and they do it really well with a contrasting thing aspect. I don't know. I don't know how they do it, but they use words that you would not expect, and that's what hits. You immediately not only see the contrasting comparison, but you feel it, and uh, I love seeing that. And then in Lonesome Dove, it's less about contrast. Like I don't really notice that. It's more about just how real the characters are and how they do things based off of their character. They're never doing anything outside of their character, but every character is different. You got a group of all these different cowboys, and they all feel different. Um, so and it's Lorena is multifaceted and doing her own thing and having her own journey, but there's never this contrast from what I've noticed in Lonesome Dove, but I don't think that's the point of it. It's more character driven. uh yeah, I don't know how else to
But
say it.
wouldn't you say there's a contrast between Call and Gus? I feel like they're pretty strong
Well, yeah, I think
contrasting
it's
characters.
it's more about how I'm thinking when I think contrast, I think more poetry,
Ah.
uh, and, like, visual and feeling of contrast,
Mhm. Mhm.
and how an author uses words to paint a picture,
Mhm.
contrasting words, like, conflicting words. Whereas these, the contrast is so deep within the characters, that you don't think of, "Oh, this is contrast," when I'm
Mhm.
reading the book. I don't know,
Mm.
I'm kind of, doing a word vomit now because 'cause I'm trying to think it out loud, but yeah,
No, no,
I don't know.
yeah.
Trying to
I
help
got
me out.
you. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's very for me in Chess Story, it was very explicit and, same with Ethan
Good
Frome,
point.
like, especially when I was
Explicit.
looking at, like, the symbolism.
Yeah.
It was mostly, like, operating in a symbolic way in both stories, but then you also saw how it was enriched through the characters,
Mm.
and the contrast within those. But you're right, I so I see what you mean because in Lonesome Dove, you maybe don't see that explicit contrast in the, like, symbols of the story or the symbolic, um, element of the story or thematic element of the story, perhaps?
I think
Yeah.
that is exactly right.
Oh,
I
good.
don't feel like
I'm glad I caught there.
I don't feel like I'm reading for symbols. This isn't like a Cormac McCarthy book or something where I'm
Mhm.
trying to, "What's the philosophy here? What's underneath here? What am I trying to understand?" Because there's no real ambiguity here. You're just seeing this story unfold in real life, in this book, in this real time era. It feels less poetry and more just boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. No, I love it. I love hearing you continue to process your thoughts on
Hey,
Lonesome
I
Dove.
got it.
There's more. There's always more to say. There's always
Yeah.
more to say about it. Yeah. A great contrast is beautiful language about terrible things. Bluest eye Lolita. Ooh. Um, yeah. Heavy, heavy, heavy. Let's go on to our next one though. What's your third one?
Um, I'm gonna go ahead and say, uh, I think so. Everyone's journey of reading is different, and I like you mentioned. I think we had this conversation off camera or off the stream where we were talking about how we both like fantasy, the
Mhm.
genre of fantasy books. And I've taken a break from fantasy and reading more fiction, just fictional stories, self-contained stories. I don't need 15 books in a series to get the whole thing. I can read one book and love it. Um, and what I've loved about fiction lately, authors are able to tell stories within a specific era or section of time, of a historical time frame that actually might have happened. Whereas Lonesome Dove feels like it's authentic and true to the time. There are no congruencies or modern slang or just like, just little things because you know how things, it's different from the 90s to the 2010 to 2026. Like things change. Um, this feels like post Civil War. I think what it's late 1800s. I don't know exactly. Mid 1800s. It just I feel like I'm reading history and I appreciate that. I think certain aspects of history may not be, uh, I don't know, just uh, you're able to swallow and take in. It can be quite shocking, but it's authentic and true to that time. And I think that's an important thing in uh, historical fiction. Someone mentioned to me about Ken Follett,
Mhm.
Follett
Mhm.
in the
Pillars of the Earth?
Pillars of the Earth.
Mhm.
That excites me because hopefully that is also authentic to that medieval time frame. Because then I can read a fictional story, but also learn a little bit of history in a way. Um, I've just loved that. And
I
mainly
love that,
from Lonesome
yeah.
Dove, I've noticed that this might be something I enjoy. I wanna read more historical fiction.
Ah, I love historical fiction. Well, I have loved some historical fiction, I'll say, and, actually, I think for fantasy lovers, Guy Gavriel Kay again, because he specifically chooses uh, history to set his stories in. It's a fictional world,
Mhm.
but it's a fictional world based on a very specific time in history, in a specific place in history. So, like, for example, this is very much inspired by Middle Ages France, whereas a song, let's see, Lions of Alberson is based on medieval Spain.
Mm.
And yeah, so and you have a very direct almost analogies to that. So yeah, he's very good about that and making you feel like you're in a fantasy story, but you're still learning about that period of history. You're feeling that there's a feeling of that sense of history about it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that's fantastic. I love that as well. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and read a comment here. Hilled by Nicola Griffith was wonderful in that way. She took care to make it with current English for obvious reasons, but maintain a degree of linguistic integrity. Interesting. Yeah. Pillars of the Earth is great, but not written in the language of the time. Really? Hmm. Well, I think that's okay though. I mean, I think some degree it's okay to have books that are not exactly written in like a medieval with medieval jargon because maybe that'd be really
Yeah,
difficult to understand.
yeah, yeah,
Possibly. I don't
yeah.
know. Like maybe things could be slightly anachronistic. I think what Thomas is referring to though is like you don't necessarily want them talking about uh LMOA or, have like, emojis or cell
Yeah,
phones, not
yeah.
something that directly anachronistic, in
You
other
know how
words.
you watch shows nowadays or something when you just see characters talk, it's like no one in real life talks like that. Even if I mean, regardless of, like, jargon and, like, modern phrases and stuff, it's more just no one would say that. And what I love about books that not really, like, accurate to the historical era, but more just you see characters talk as they truly would, and that makes for a believable story, and it provides investment in the characters that much more because what they say like Gus, his humor is so I have never laughed at a book so much,
Mhm,
truly, but that's
mhm,
because the humor is from the characters. It's not Larry McMurtry's humor.
mhm.
I mean, from what I'm like how I'm able to metabolize it, it's Gus and it's all the boys and these characters, it's them saying that. It's not an author trying to weave in their own thing. It feels
Yes.
like the characters are separate from the author. I don't know. Maybe that's a whole nother topic, but uh, I just appreciate realistic dialogue true to characters.
Yes, absolutely, where it feels like those characters are real living beings,
Yeah,
independent of the author, but the author is channeling them. I
yeah,
I think that's yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I totally get that, totally get that.
Because you can
Um
tell when like an author is like, I don't know. Maybe I just haven't read that yet, but um, I don't know where it just feels like I'm not immersed in the world and like invested in the characters because I'm fixated on the writing style or just how the author's presenting things. It kind of distracts.
I'm having that experience right now with one of my reads,
Oh
sadly.
boy.
Yeah, but yes, I'm also I got this comment here because I was not the biggest fan of Gates of Fire, which is an interesting it's a historical fiction book,
Mm,
and it's one of those things where you could recognize that the writing is very good, like a sentence by sentence way. It's like, wow, this person knows their way around a sentence. They know what they're doing. And at the same time, I felt outside of it, um, I didn't quite connect to the story. I felt like there's something about when writing I'm sorry, because this is about things we're loving in books, and I'm departing into something I'm not loving in books. But I think part of it for me is like, I think what you're maybe what I'm sensing from what you're saying, or what I'll pick up from what you're saying is that when you feel like the author's voice too much in the character
There
rather than the character
yes,
feeling like its
really well
own
put.
thing.
Perfect.
And you feel like the other part of this that I think is hard for me is when I feel like the author is trying so hard to push the melodrama that I don't feel like the buildup of the tension because I'm already supposed to be so emotional all the every single moment. Like I feel like I need a build, and sometimes like the melodrama in the voice gets so carried away that it pulls me out. And I think that's the case for me with Gates of Fire, though it has been a few years since I've read it. So
Yeah, yeah.
just for what it's worth.
That's a yeah, I appreciate you helping me out, figure out my words because 'cause I'm also, I don't know. I this bed right here, it's like a cloud, and I don't wake up just like a Pop-Tart like I normally do. I wake up like, "Oh my god, I just wanna sleep in." So, kinda groggy today.
Oh, I'm groggy today too. It's actually kind of muggy here, and I did
Oh,
not want to get out of bed this morning.
yeah.
And I've talked to a few other people earlier, and they were feeling the same thing here. This is sorry about that. Yeah,
We're doing good.
that
We're
that
doing
was a
all
really funny comment, by the way, Mitch. Sorry. Yeah, writing
oh,
a modern book where the
mm,
dialogue is 50%. Well, like, and
mm,
yeah. So, oh, let's see. I'll go ahead and highlight this comment. Hi, guys. Love you both and love this topic. I find myself not knowing if a book is good or not and tend to equate the ease of reading and the speed at which I read to it being good. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting telling that to Thomas and me because we're notorious for reading very slowly. So that reading slowly doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad book for us, but
yeah,
but for some people I can understand that. It's like I'm lost my momentum. I'm not turning the pages. I've certainly been there before though. I've certainly been there before too. So yeah, just depends.
yeah. Do you think reading slow, and methodical, like, affects your momentum in a book? Especially if maybe you're not fully engaged just yet, or if you're struggling in the middle of it?
That's a really great question. I think I think for me, if I'm reading consistently, that's the most important thing because some days I might just read like 10 minutes a day because it's a really busy season. And most of the time, I try to carve out an hour a day. I usually read while I'm walking on my treadmill in the morning. So I almost always have that 1 hour of reading. And even if I'm not totally loving the book, I'm pretty bad about pushing through books, even if I'm not loving them. But yeah, I think if I were to if I didn't have that structured into my day, that habitual structure of I'm reading an hour a day regardless, for most days, like I said, every once in a while, I'll have a day where that just doesn't happen, and it's usually just 1 day a week, but most of the time, like, that will keep me going, but if I were somebody who just read whenever I felt like it, if I didn't have that structured in, I'd probably lose momentum, and I'd probably struggle a lot more than I am right now, and I would probably go back to where I was many years ago, where I was constantly DNFing books. I hardly ever DNF books now.
Same.
In fact, I don't even remember the last physical book I DNF'd. I mostly DNF audiobooks if I'm not feeling it. But but, uh, but years ago, there was a time when I could not get through a single book because I was just relying on my emotion to carry me, kinda like how some people might only work out if they feel like working out. Then it's really hard to keeping consistent. And so for me, it's all about that, like, structured time, and yes, then the momentum, comes along when I do that, but otherwise, I think momentum would die for
Yeah,
me. What
yeah.
about you?
I think I've definitely gotten out of the routine. I used to work out, 3 times a week very rigidly, reading, in the morning or at night, but now it's just kind of we've been hanging out with a lot of friends this year, uh, just trying to say yes more to people, and I think, socially, it's just that's taking up our time, and that's not a bad thing. I love it,
Mm.
but also I read the best and the most outside of the house at a coffee shop because I'm separating hobbies and I'm separating work because I work at home. So it's hard to like, when I'm taking a break from work, I'm usually just doing house chores or prepping meals or something. So yeah, reading has been less, but also when I'm out of the house, I'm reading more because I'm just like compartmentalizing that hobby for coffee shops.
Oh, I love that though. Reading
Yeah.
at a coffee shop is a wonderful. I think that's a fun hobby.
And then
That
you
makes
run
it
into
fun.
Ryan Gosling. It's crazy,
That's so cool. Yeah.
crazy. Wish I but you let him go. You let him
Oh
leave.
yeah, yeah,
You
of
don't
course.
go up to him. No. The dude's wearing sunglasses and a hat. Let him go. You
Yeah,
can only say
yeah.
something in passing. But anyways, okay, who's next? You?
I think I'm next for number three.
I think it yeah.
So my number three one is what I'm going to call the thematic rug pull. So what I mean by this is that
Repeat it
sometimes
again?
thematic rug pull.
Okay.
I'll explain it. I'll
Okay.
explain. And I apologize. I just got braces, so if my speech is impeded, that's why. But yes, so thematic rug pull. And what I mean by this, and this is something that I actually learned through talking with our friend David from Four Corners of the Page
Wow.
recently, because we were talking about one of my favorite books, by Tanith Lee is Electric Forest. Tanith Lee is an author that I've been just adoring lately. She was a very well-known or highly regarded science fiction and fantasy writers of the late 70s, I would say, and 80s and 90s. She is no longer with us, unfortunately, but her books are just she has such an outstanding writing voice. And one of her books that I absolutely adore, the first one I ever read is called Electric Forest. And
Mm.
one of the things I loved about this book, now keep in mind, I loved this book even before I got to the ending. When I was halfway through the book, I was thinking, I need to read more Tanith Lee. I was already online looking for more Tanith Lee because I loved her writing so much. But when I got to the end of the book, there was something that happened that it it's not only like it's not really it could be seen as like a plot twist, but for me it was more like it was like a rug pull. Like, "What? You're doing this with the story?" And yet it was more about how it recontextualized the themes that that I initially identified at the beginning of the story. And so another author who does this brilliantly, and again, I'm distinguishing or making it distinct from plot twist, though it could be seen that way in some ways. But the other author I think who does this magnificently is Kazuo Ishiguro. And specifically, of course, I can't give away spoilers, but he does this in Never Let Me Go, though I did know what it was. I was spoiled for that book, though I still think it's done magnificently in that book. Never Let Me Go, and then Remains of the Day. I would say that there's a bit of a thematic rug
Oh, I
pull with
got
that.
that book, for my wife for Christmas because I know she likes, Downton Abbey.
Yes.
So I was
Yes,
like, "Oh,
yes.
that could be a book that maybe," but she's
Yes.
Dungeon Crawler Carl is her jam.
Yes. Oh, well, I hope she loves it. I hope
Yeah.
she loves Remains of the Day. The other one, though, the big one for him, I think, is A Pale View of Hills.
Mm.
That one has a huge thematic rug pull for me. Like, I was completely speechless when I finished the book, and I
Yeah.
realized what Ishiguro was actually doing with that story. So it's hard to put it into words because, of course, that would be a spoiler, but if any of you've read any of those books, then you probably have some idea of what I'm talking about. Again, I think it's more than just a plot twist. It's like, again, recontextualizing the themes that you were initially presented with in the story. And so I'm very much a theme-driven reader, so that is something that I just adore in storytelling.
Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't read anything with, like, plot twists where the rug is pulled out from underneath you, and it's kind of out of character for the story and the author, and it's like when you build this foundation for the reader or for the viewer of a show or a gamer of a game, and then it just you break a rule that you set toward the end especially, you're
Mhm.
like, there's that lack of trust that you have that's broken, and you're just kind of hit in the gut with, like, what happened here? What's going
It
on?"
it's not necessarily a rule break, though. It's hard to go into this without you reading an exact example,
Yeah.
but it's more like, "Oh, that's what you've been doing all along.
Mm,
And it's where you look back and you realize if I reread this book, I would be seeing it totally differently. And in
yeah.
fact, uh, I this comment here, Joanna, did you ever finish Book of the New Sun and Dune Saga? Okay, so I with Dune Saga, I'm not sure which Dune book. I have read the first three Dune books, but I have not
Mm.
read further in the Dune series. I love all three books though. But with Book of the New Sun, brilliant example of this.
Don't say anything.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just
That's
saying
on my list.
thematic rug pull. Thematic rug pull. I mean, I guess you could see this as a plot rug pull too to some degree, but it is what I'm talking about in the sense that you get to the end and you're like, "Oh, this is what you've been doing all along." And I knew that was coming. Like I knew that's the thing is like reading it, I knew there was going to be something like that. I still didn't know exactly what,
Mhm.
but then you get to the end, but the beauty of it is that you get to the end, and even me knowing and even having some ideas of what it was doing, it's still the case for me where I'm like, if I reread the series, I would be reading it totally differently. Like, I would see
Yeah,
things
makes for a new
very
experience.
differently than the first time because
Yeah.
it's just absolutely incredible. Yeah, so, yeah, but if you could like wipe your memory of a book so good, you wanna read it again, like the first time you experienced it, it's weird, but the question is valid. Yeah, and it's weird because, like, with all these examples I'm talking about, like, I feel like they would be incredible reread experiences because you're looking at those things in a different way and seeing the seeds and seeing things in a new way. But it's a valid question. I know that Thomas has been talking at length on his channel about you've been talking at length on your channel about how you only get to read a book once,
Mhm.
and that is why you're taking your time with Lonesome Dove. But is there
Yeah.
another book that you wish you could read again for the first time?
I'd say Name of the Wind right now, just because I haven't finished Lonesome Dove. Um, but yeah, Name of the Wind. I just wanna wipe my memory and just kind of re-experience that again.
Yeah, it's such a great book. It's
Yeah,
been many years I say many years. It's been a few years since I've read that book, and so I need to reread it at some point, but
yeah. Real quick, before we continue, I'm curious, did you ever read Howling Dark?
no, I haven't
Okay, so
yet.
you and I are in the same spot because 'cause I'm
Yeah,
so hesitant right now still. I
yeah.
had Two to Ramble, again on my channel last week, and I'm like, "Persuade me, guys." I don't want to read that series right now, and
Yeah.
I'm trying I go back and forth every other week. Like, do I continue? 'Cause I it's such a struggle when the writing style is almost just too much, and when you start a series and it's a bad first book, that's tough.
Mhm.
Usually, if it's, like, a really good first book and, like, maybe a good second book and then the 3rd and 4th, like, the middle is kinda iffy, you're still gonna more often than not see it through. But
Mm.
when your first, you know, example of your story is I didn't like, why would I wanna continue? So it's tough. It's really tough to, like that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, yeah. I feel very much the same way. I think it's hard because I hear so many people just adore that series, but
Mhm.
just feeling so middling about that first book, it makes me feel like, well, maybe I'm not the right reader for it. I don't
Yeah.
know. Because I know people who love that first book, like they just sing the praises of that first book, and they're huge fans of the series. So it does make me feel like, well, maybe it's just not for me. And I will say this, like, Book of the New Sun is an unusual experience in that I have completed that. I still need to read Earth of the New Sun, which is the next installment. I guess it could be conceded as the completion of that series, but I am notoriously the worst when it comes to continuing science fiction series. I don't know what it is. I love science fiction. I just sang the praises of The Dispossessed by Le Guin and other Le Guin books. But when it comes to a series, for some reason, I just struggle. I do want to read Howling Dark eventually, though. And the
Yeah.
reason why is for two reasons. One, I am curious. I've heard that that is way better. Everybody keeps saying it's so much
Mhm.
better than the first book. And the second reason I am wanting to read Howling Dark is that I wanna read it and probably just be done with the series after that because
Same,
unless it totally changes my
same.
mind, I mean, I'm open to that possibility, but I wanna read it, feel good about it, and then stop because I'd rather end my journey with Sun Eater feeling like, "Okay, I feel good about that," but not
Mhm.
like, "Ugh," you know,
Yeah, the
not as
door is
negative
still
about it.
kind of open, and I can't go to sleep until it's closed or it's I walk through it because yeah, I read that first book a year ago almost, and I couldn't tell you what it's about. Um, but anyways, I didn't wanna sidetrack us, I was just so
No,
curious. So
it's
if you
fine.
do continue, please, email me, shoot me a message, and let me know, and then I'll see what I'm doing right there, like what I'm reading, and I'll feel more inclined to read it alongside someone else.
Yes, let me know too. Same back at you. So,
Deal.
yeah, maybe we could just do a very slow buddy read at some point where it's like,
That's
let's
what we'll
read
probably have to do.
2 pages a day.
Only way I can get through it, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and hopefully we'll like it, you know? I mean, at the very least, hopefully it'll just move the marker up for us from what we felt from the first book, so, yeah.
uh, so we talk about slow reading, that's another thing, that's my number 4 that I
Well, go
like,
for it. Mhm.
is pace. When I've always talked about this on my channel, pace, 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 pace. When moments are given that time to breathe, um, and things aren't cut off too quickly, and also things don't overstay their welcome, and pacing is subjective. You know, in the beginning of Lonesome Dove, there's 220 pages where, quote unquote, "nothing happens." But so much happens because that's investment in the characters. That's my kind of book. Um, I also enjoy kind of a bonus thing on top of that is just the length of a book. I feel like I am a little more invested um, when the book is 500 plus pages because a 200 to 300 page book mentally and physically I can get that book done in a week. Uh, but how I approach reading so intentionally, I want to take my time with it and really metabolize it as best I can. And more often than not, 200 to 300 page books are very much like, okay, cool, done. Um, However, I have read books where authors do so much in that time and nothing is wasted in like a 200 to 300 page book where it's amazing what they can do. There's a book called The Stranger that I want to read, and that's like not even 150 pages. I'm curious to read that to see what an author can do in that amount of time. But on the other side, I just enjoy seeing, 800 pages in my hands and just, I can relax. This is cozy. I can just sit in it for as long as I'd like. And the author is giving me that time. Uh, Whereas maybe something like Red Rising, which is something I would potentially like to give a shot, from what I hear, it's just like boom, 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 boom.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
And that,
It's very fast.
that's for other people. But for me,
Yeah.
I like slow stuff, and that's just what I've enjoyed. I enjoy that in a book.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because when I was reading Red Rising, I was reading it back to back with my reread of Lord of the Rings, and it was so jarring to go from this slower paced, beautifully immersive fantasy world on Middle Earth that feels very grounded and ethereal at the same time, and then to shoot up into this crazy fast space opera. It was like so jarring. It was such a it was a lot. It was a lot for me to adjust to. So I'm with you about that. That's exactly what you're describing is exactly what I'm loving about Robin Hobb right now.
Yeah.
And and it's funny because like I can understand why people say nothing happens, like, but at the same time, so much happens. Like I did a vlog, a spoiler filled vlog of Golden Full. It was my
Yeah.
last video. It was like an hour and a half long, and I know people can look at that book and think it's slow paced and that nothing happens, but there is so much complexity. There is so much conversation about, like, there's so much in depth exploration between the characters and processing of things, and I think this is something I love about slower paced books is that and explained this actually, I said this in a comment on Philip's channel, Philip Chase, he did a video recently about is slower fantasy better fantasy, something along those lines. And I said that I think one of the things I love, especially thinking about Robin Hobb, about books that take their time, is that then the character gets to process what they've been through. If they're in constant
Emotionally,
action or a
especially.
constant
Yeah.
sword fight or a constant explosion, you don't have time to sit and think about what actually happened to you. You don't have time to feel what's going on. And so, like, when a character actually has the time to think about things, to reflect on things, not that you necessarily want them to go on forever and ever on one reflection, but to have like some breathing time to actually feel and reflect and notice things or something slowly coming into their
Right
awareness,
on the nose.
that's it for me. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I want.
Yeah, and then that's, reading Wheel of Time for 2 years, and then a year after, this past year, reading all these other books, all these different genres, and lengths, and just really growing and developing as a reader. I get to figure out what I like in a book and what I don't. And number 1 is pace. Well, first off, it's the writing style. Like, I can tell in the first 2 chapters, like, "Okay,
Mhm.
this is gonna be a struggle or this is poetry."
Yes.
Um, but then the next thing is pace, and you just feel it right away when you know it's just right, and it's very subjective. Some
Yeah.
people may think 200 pages of cowboys eating breakfast and digging a well is boring. Others, like myself, this is this might as well be the battle against the Dark Lord. This is it.
Mhm.
This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that you said just characters given the time to sit and develop or yeah, just kind of process their feelings. Uh, I've there's a show called Better Call Saul. I don't know. I can't remember
Mhm.
if you
Yeah.
have you seen it all the way through.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it. I have watched Breaking Bad, and
Talks
my
about
husband's a huge fan of
Breaking Bad
Better
is
Call
just
Saul.
this is great,
Mhm.
but it is more Red Rising, more uh, it's a roller coaster of a ride. Whereas Better Call Saul is you get to sit with these characters for episodes at a time, and it's just perfectly written dialogue. But you're given that time with them to process, and I think that's just rare in TV shows because we have to leave everything on a cliffhanger, or everything has to be spoon fed to us. Where it's like it's nice to just sit with a character who we don't know what they're thinking, but we know they're thinking, and then we find out later. It's great.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, like, even in our real lives, if we're constantly busy, we might not be able to, like, sit and notice certain things or feel certain things, and so I feel like we do need that in storytelling,
Yeah,
personally. So yeah, absolutely. I do need to watch Better Call Saul at some point. I
you
know
got
that my husband loves it. Yeah.
number one show of all time for me.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm just gonna catch up in the comments here really quickly. Joanna, have you read Tender is the Flesh? I have not, but I think this is the book that where people are eating people. Is that right? Cannibalism or
Oh
something?
gosh,
So
yeah.
it kind of creeps me out, like the premise of it
Yeah.
every time I hear about it. But I've heard it's fantastic. So I don't know. That's cool. Thank you for the recommendation though, if that's the case. Because yeah, and, let's see what else. Yeah, Fight Club. I have read that before. Wasn't quite my vibe, but totally get what you mean. It used to be the first book is the best. Nowadays, it seems like we're expecting to wait until later books. Interesting. Yeah. Haunting of Hill House, which I have not read or watched, was a major disappointment. Oh, that's sad to hear. Brilliant setup to a
Did
very
you
sad end.
Dash, did you watch the show first?
I
Because
haven't yeah,
they're 2 different things, and if you had watched the show and you read the book, it's jarring how different it is.
that's what I've heard.
I've only
I've
read
heard
the
they're very
book,
different.
but I had a conversation with a guy who, said he hasn't read the book, but he loves the show,
Mhm.
um, and no, actually, he did read the book, so that's why he said, like, they're completely different. Uh, so that could be something.
Yeah.
Expectations, you know?
And he says here, "No, I haven't watched the
Oh,
show."
okay.
Yeah, I've heard it's very different.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, David says here, "You're summing up my feelings about pacing. If I'm given interesting things to think about, I want to live with it. If it's the string of constant action, I get bored and want the book to move on."
And
Mhm.
nothing feels, when it's constant action, it just doesn't feel real. Not all the time you need to be reading or experiencing something real, but I like humanity and human nature in a book. And when you're given that time to breathe, you can sit with human feelings um, that you may or may not have experienced. And
Yeah.
it's great. Love it.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. That's so well said. Absolutely. Are we on me now? I can't remember now. I
I
think
think
you
we're on
got
you.
yeah, we're
I
on
talked
me.
about pace. I've got one left. So I did
Okay.
four. You're on four. I got five. You got five. So
Okay. So mine's going to be very much related to some of what we've talked about a little bit. And that's going to be, well, maybe it's a little different, but I'm going to call it existential inquiry. And it's so strange because there was a time, and I had forgotten about this, except that my husband brought it up recently. There was a time so many years ago when I used to cringe anytime I heard the word existentialism. Like, I would cringe. I hated the
mm,
word. I always associated it with these guys I knew in the past who acted like they were just so like and I don't know, so intellectual and so emotionally removed and above being emotional because they're existential. Like I had this very negative image of what existential meant
I'm
in my
Googling the
mind.
definition right now because I don't even.
Yeah. Um, I guess the way I look at existentialism is the way that it's basically a philosophy of being able to create meaning, how you create meaning out of your life. So there are two schools. I'm going to take a talk about it in terms of there's a term nihilism and there's
Yeah.
a term existentialism. I'm going to use the word existential a little bit more broadly, but I'll first say this, like with nihilism, you have this idea that life is meaningless. When you die, you die. There is no point. And there can almost be a cynical view of why are we even trying to do anything in this life if it doesn't mean anything? Whereas existentialism goes this positive step from there and it says, okay, maybe maybe there is no external force that is governing us or that tells us that there's meaning at the end of what we're doing, but maybe we create meaning for ourselves. Maybe meaning is self-created, and maybe we can decide for ourselves what is meaningful to us. And then we can decide from and even if you don't take on those extreme worldviews, you could just say existential in the terms of like, what does it mean to exist in the world? What is the meaning of life? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have a meaningful yeah, what does it mean to have a meaningful existence? And some of my favorite books, in my opinion, explore that.
Mm.
So I'll give you one example actually that I think I would recommend to you someday as a someday read for you if you're interested. Stoner by John Williams. Have you heard of that?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's gonna be. I'm reading that very soon. I'm going to. Like I want to read that this year.
Oh, it's
Um,
actually one of my favorite books of all time.
yeah, I made a video of 10 books I want to read before my lifetime. And I almost put that on there, but I don't know why. I just felt like I kept seeing it pop up on BookTube and stuff, and I was like kind of scared to like just feel like I'm just copying everyone.
Oh,
So I didn't put it on there because it didn't feel
yeah.
authentic.
Yeah.
It just felt yeah, but I picked it up at a bookstore. I'm like, "Gosh, I recognize that cover. That looks good." And I've heard about, John Williams because I originally heard of, Butcher's Crossing.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, it's
I
excellent
won't
too.
be reading that because I'm reading Lonesome Dove, so I don't wanna read 2 books very similar in that light, but I hear it's a
Yeah.
very deep book.
So I've read the 3 big John Williams books, which are Butcher's Crossing, Stoner, and Augustus. Augustus, by the way, historical fiction, one of my favorite historical fiction books of all time. Butcher's Crossing, incredible Western story that, like Lonesome Dove, it de-romanticizes the Western genre. It's looking at a critical
Mm,
exploration of it.
that's a
And
good point.
yeah, and Stoner is my is one of my favorite books of all time. Like, I adore that
Yes.
book. It is, uh, interesting, though, because I feel like that is I'm not gonna give anything away. I'll
Yeah,
just say
yeah.
we follow a man named William Stoner. You get the whole premise within the first paragraph of the book, but basically, I feel like so much of that book and what it explores and what I love about it is what does it mean to to lead a meaningful life? What does success mean? What does greatness mean? And some of the ways that we look at these superficial markers of success versus what we're internally driven towards. So I love those kind of conversations. I love it. Remains of the Day does something similar by
Mhm.
Kazuo Ishiguro, but looking specifically at what does success mean? What does greatness mean? What does greatness in one's profession means? And then the boundary line between professionalism, being great in your profession versus being great as a human being in your home life, maybe with your wife or loved ones or yeah. And so I love books that explore deeply thoughtful questions about what it means to be alive, what it means to be human. So,
Okay.
like, an example would be I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, which was my
Mm.
number 2 favorite book of the year last year. Which I keep saying, it from the title, you would think it's just about what it means to be a woman, but it's so much more than that. It's really about what it means to be a human. And, another one, yeah, there I would say, even though this is maybe not directly confronting that specific question, I I might put The Last Unicorn in this camp too. I did
Mm.
feel like there was something that was questioning of life in a way. I
There
felt like
really
there
is.
was something a little existential about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a sad book, and I don't wanna spoil that, but I guess I just did with just emotions you might be feeling, but it's, it's not all happy, but there's deep beauty in that sadness and that longing of yeah, I think you're right, there is,
Yes.
like, some sort of
Oh,
existential.
and I love that longing, melancholic longing and wonder in a
I can't
story.
wait to reread that.
I
It's a
am
book
this
that I'm
Yeah, it's
gonna just
gorgeous.
reread
Yeah.
over and over and
I
over
think I
again.
told you I read that as a teen, and I don't think I understood the depth of it when I read it the first time, and then, like, I just thought it was a fun, charming, whimsical story, and it does have those elements too. It does have humor, it does have a light whimsical touch here and there, fun wordplay, but then as an adult, I reread it and I was like, "Whoa." There's so
Yeah.
much It's so much more poignant than I realized at the first time. So, yeah, it's a great book. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, so that is my number 4. I guess we can go right on to number 5.
Okay, well, mine would be I guess it's similar in this way, but I don't know, they're all kind of they mesh, but
Yeah.
consistency in consistent and mature tone. Uh, Mainly because of I'm reading Lonesome Dove, and that's kind of what I'm thinking in the back of my head, where I love how consistent it is in its tone, in its characters, in its humor,
Yes.
in some of the stuff that happens, and how mature it is. It doesn't feel like it's a someone that's kind of detached from humanity writing this. It's feels like someone who really understands characters and understood or was knowledgeable of the time frame that this took place in. I just really appreciate that. And I also appreciate that in my TV shows and movies when you see characters being consistent, doing what they would truly do because that's what their character would do, not there's nothing out of character. And if it is out of character, you were already given that information and their thought process, because you know about Call and Gus and just how they think, and one's a hard worker, one's really not, and one kind of is chill, and I don't know. Uh, but I just appreciate consistency
I
because the
love
moment
that.
you break
Yeah.
that consistency in tone and maturity, uh, I don't care anymore. I
Yes.
lose trust in what the author or director was setting out to do. So I appreciate that.
I love that. I love that one, Thomas. That's really, really good. Yeah. No, that's so true. I so a couple thoughts come to mind. One is that I remember when I read Stoner, I'll just give Stoner as an example a little bit because Stoner does make choice. He does act a certain way that will challenge you as a reader. But then there are other times when he doesn't act the way you might expect, but it feels authentic to the
Mm,
character. There's still an authentic aspect to it. And I read the book with my mom. It was actually a buddy read with my
mm,
mom, and she
that's
loved it
fun.
too. We couldn't stop talking about the book for a couple of years. Like, every time we talk on the phone, we just end up talking about Stoner.
Yep.
But she said something really interesting to me at the time when we finished it. I finished it and then she finished it. And I remember she said, "The book is very," and she's by the way, she has a degree in English and 'cause she could talk about books way better than I can. But she said, the one thing about the book, she said, is the book is very cohesive, and that's not easy to do. She said, "A lot of people think that that's easy to do." She said, "That's not easy to do, to make a book that feels cohesive." Like, there's a sense of everything fits in this narrative, and it's so tightly wound, it's so tightly bound, and I feel the same way even, like, if I'm reading something that's very stylistically different. Like, for example, with Tanith Lee, who I keep gushing about, I've been reading her books, the Flat Earth series is what it's called,
Mm.
and it's a very dark, whimsical world that's with an omniscient narration. The characters are flat, okay? So they are flat. Um, but that said, they fit. They fit this type of world. It's like almost like if you were watching a dark claymation story, if you think of it that way, and it has a certain aesthetic. Like you wouldn't want if you were watching a claymation animation story, you wouldn't want suddenly a realistic character to enter. Like it would look weird. It wouldn't fit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it fits what she's doing, fits the world, and it fits the type of story she's making. So, I guess, like, things making sense in the story in that way, stylistically, I just I think there's something to that. I hope that's connecting to what you're saying in some
No,
ways.
I think so. I love the word cohesion because that's another aspect I look for in stories, in books and movies. I when something feels out of place or something looked like they just plopped it in the middle, um, like, "What is this? What were you thinking? This makes
Mhm.
no sense. This has nothing to do with everything else. I could have
Yes,
just ignored this." No, everything in Lonesome Dove especially, every story is cohesive and
cohesive, yes,
consistent tone.
excellent. And I'm just gonna say, Mitch is saying here, Augustus about to be torn apart by a big and respected booktuber. I got a sneak peek and it was inflammatory. You need to tell me who this is. You have to tell us who this is. Um, I'm horrified. I'm horrified. Just joking. Okay, and then Tori says here, consistency is such a great way to explain it. I love so many different styles and tones of story, but I do want it to be consistent. And I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. Yeah. And Tori is with me, by the way. I will hear no Augustus slander. It's such a good book. I'm like,
What's the elevator pitch for that?
oh, it's about the great Emperor Augustus, and, it's a
Mm,
historical fiction novel.
wow.
It's an epistolary format, so it's all in letters, and it's nonlinear, so you kinda jump around in time with these
That
letters.
sounds like fun.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Oh,
I
man. I need to yeah, I'll put that on my list too. Um, but yeah, what is your number 5,
Oh, my
right?
number 5.
Have you done it?
I loved that. So mine is I'll say that this is somewhat in relationship with, and these are not ranked, by the way, just so
Yeah,
you know, for
they're
me.
all kind of
Yeah. Um, gosh, because there's so many different ones I could have said here, and I'm kind of wondering if I should have chosen a different one, but I'm gonna go with this anyway because I wrote it down. Okay. So the last time I did one of these lists of 10 things I'm loving in books right now, I talked about one thing that at the time, and I still love this in books. I was specifically loving non-human consciousness explored in books. Like, because it's a lot of times authors are humans
mhm.
and it's really hard as a human to write about a form of consciousness that doesn't think and operate like a human would think or operate. So a non-anthropomorphized form of consciousness. And at the time, my examples for this included a brilliant work of science fiction called Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. And so
Mm,
it's about this psychologist who goes to this planet called Solaris. He's there with a couple of other scientists, and they're studying the planet because the planet itself is conscious. And it's doing all types of crazy things. It is a wild story. There have been a couple of, I think, film adaptations of it, but it's absolutely wild the way that Stanislaw Lem brought this planet to life and the way he made you feel like this could be real, but doesn't feel human at the same time. And, I was also at the time, I had read a Janie Wertz book in Wars of Light and Shadow, where she does something similar in one of her books. She creates this non-human consciousness that occurs in one part of the story that was so interesting. It was just so out it was so out there and so interesting and
mm,
so wondrous that I loved how she played with consciousness in that way. But this time I'm actually gonna take the opposite route with this one, and that is gonna be that I am actually finding myself at times, and of course, it's dependent on how good the writer is. I'm not gonna
yeah.
say I'm gonna love this in all books, but I love it when I'm reading non-human consciousness that feels like human consciousness. And that happens to the point where I struggle to separate the 2. So examples of this include Clara and the Sun by Ishiguro. This is a book about a little girl who's an AI. She's an AI bot, basically, or what's called an artificial friend. And they're created in this society in order to cure teenagers from loneliness. Because a lot of these teenagers live lonely existences. So they have to have these like AI friends in order to make them have a friend, basically, not feel lonely. And we're in first person narration with this character. I adore this story. I love it, but I felt for Clara. I felt like this was a real person, even though it's not. And the way that Ishiguro explores, again, the existential inquiry, which also applies to this book, through a non human character was so brilliantly done. So that's one example. Another example is a book that I read last year that made it into my top 10 books, and it's a Tanith Lee book. Again, Tanith Lee makes a mention here, and it was called The Silver Medal Lover. And it's
Okay.
about a future world where it's in the future. There have been some cataclysms that have happened on Earth, but we're following a young teenage girl who comes across this robot who's a musician. He's a minstrel, a silver medal minstrel who looks like a man, except he has silver skin. He talks like a man, he acts like a man, and he also, kind of like Clara in the Sun, he's been programmed in order to make people happy. And so
Mhm.
she meets him and it freaks her out because he looks so like a real person. And they form this relationship that is unbelievable. And the story, I had a prediction of where it was going and it went in a totally different direction than I thought.
That's always fun.
But yeah, it was. But I adored it. I adored this character named Silver, even though it was not a human. And so, yeah, there's something about that exploration that clearly I seem to enjoy
Never
at times.
experienced that in a book. Um, so that's all new to me. So I'm just kind of sitting here learning. Yeah, I don't think I've ever really thought of that or looked at that. Um, the only way I could have ever experienced something like that was visually through like a film or a movie or a game. Um, but through writing, I've never come across that yet. But I can't wrap my head around that yet. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know, it's an out there one,
No,
but
I mean
I just
that's
happened
neat.
to yeah, I just happened to run into it in a couple of books that I absolutely adore, and I thought, "Hey, I guess this is a thing." So, it's added to the list. Um, yeah.
White
So oh,
Fang. That sounds so familiar.
which one?
White Fang. Tori just mentioned White
Oh,
Fang.
yeah, White Fang. Isn't that by Jack London? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
But that's cool. Thanks for mentioning White Fang, Tori.
So many books, so many wonderful recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. And also some more love for Augustus. So definitely, I think you'll enjoy. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about John
Yeah.
Williams when you get to
They're
Stoner.
not terribly big. They're like okay.
They're rather short, yeah,
Good. Alright.
yeah, and he
But
does
probably
his
nothing to read over a week. I'd probably take my time with it, though. A
yeah,
schooner for sure.
yeah, it's not hard to read either. His
Yeah.
prose is it has this elegant simplicity to it, and yet it
Mhm.
feels like he's saying so much with few
Okay.
words, that kind of style. I love that kind of style in storytelling, especially when it's done in a shorter page count. I think that that can be a wonderful thing, so, yeah. And hello, Nikki. Yeah, I've heard about Lovecraft. I've not really read a lot of cosmic horror, but I know that that's definitely something that explores that type of non-human consciousness vibe. The most cohesive story I've ever read is the Watchmen graphic novel. I've heard about this, I think. Every character, plot detail, and line of dialogue leads not only the story's conclusion, but to the larger meaning and themes. Wow, that does sound like something I might enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read too many graphic novels. I am wanting to read the Walking Dead ones.
Oh, yeah. No, I have not read those, but I've also not really watched the show. So yeah,
Yeah, I hear they're
graphic novel is
completely
something
different.
that yeah, I bet. Yeah. I also love mostly entirely non-cohesive stories. The Hitchhiker's Guide books, yep, are a series of asides linked by a very plot. Yeah, that's true. I think there can be some stories out there that work in that format for sure. Yep, there are so many books
So
out
many
there.
books, so little time.
Tori, yes. Daniel Abraham's Long Price Quartet is an incredibly
Oh,
cohesive
yeah.
book. Well said. Yes, because you basically have it's a series of 4 rather shorter books, but they all span it's a long span of time following these characters from young age to adulthood and their
Mm.
journeys in between. So beautifully done.
Okay, let
Yeah.
me look that up.
Yeah. You might like it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you might. I think
Yeah,
that the
and
magic
it's fun that the longer I'm on BookTube, uh, granted, I don't think anyone should, put words in people's mouths and their thoughts, but it is fun that, folks who've followed my channel, they're understanding what I like, and they'll
Mhm.
be like, "Yeah, you'd love this," or,
Yeah.
"No, this is not for you." So it's fun to kind of, build some trust in each other
Yes.
as viewer and, uh, all that, because then we can give ourselves genuine recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. It's always a gamble, I think it's always a gamble,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah. Like I
Yeah.
said, I had a feeling you might like that, A Brightness Long Ago by Guy Gabriel Kay,
Yeah.
but,
Still haven't read it yet,
it
but
it could be a gamble, who knows,
you never
so
know.
hope
But
so, yeah.
that's the beauty of books. We can recommend it, we can gift books with no obligation to have to read or love or like that
That's
book.
right, that's right.
If you don't like it, hey, give it to someone else. Maybe they'll love it. Who
Yeah,
knows? They'll find the right person.
exactly, exactly. Oh, absolutely, I agree with that. One of my favorite
Yep.
aspects of the book community is getting those recs that I can trust from people who know me. It's awesome. Yep. It's like with Tori specifically, it's like if you have that ragtag group of people, I can't think of it. There's another way that she describes it. I cannot think of the word, but I know that she loves that. So yeah, that found family element is a big thing for her. But yeah, it's the Motley Crew, thank you. I could not, like, think of that description. The Motley Crew, absolutely. So, yeah, it's interesting, and, I like I said, I mentioned these 5 things. Let's go ahead and just summarize, our 5 things again. Do you wanna go ahead and summarize what your 5 were
Oh,
again?
goodness. Let's see. Multiple character perspectives and like character POVs. The lack of foreshadowing, specifically in Lonesome Dove.
Mhm.
Pace, moments that are given time to breathe, and specifically longer books. So like 5 to 800 page books. Um, Authentic to the historical time period, and consistent and mature tone, and maybe cohesion too.
Yeah, I love those. Those were fantastic. Yay. Mine, just to wrap up, to go ahead and go over mine, dual societies, which I talked about with The Dispossessed, A Song for Our Bon, and Midnight Tides. contrasts in storytelling with gradation, and I talked about Chess Story by Stefan Zweig and Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. The thematic rug pull is what I call it. So stories that give you a whole different context of the themes when you finish it, or understanding of what the book is actually doing when you finish it. So examples could include Book of the New Sun, definitely a good example of that. Electric Forest by Tanith Lee, several Ishiguro books, so I'll go ahead and say that too. Existential inquiry, so books that make you question what it means to be a human, or what the meaning of life is, or what does it mean to be great? What does success look like? Books like Stoner, books like Remains of the Day, I Who Have Never Known Men, which is a great exploration on what it means to be human. Clara and the Sun, I would say falls into that, The Last Unicorn. And then the last one is anthropomorphizing consciousness. So Clara and the Sun, Silver Medal Lover. Um, I had a whole bunch of bonus ones, but those are the ones I'm gonna stick with for now. We could probably go on forever, but yeah, so but these were so much fun. Thomas, I loved hearing your 5 things you're loving in books right now,
You
and I
too.
just yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. This was so much fun.
Yeah, we gotta make it
So,
happen again. We gotta get David
yes, we
and
should.
Tori
Yes, we're just gonna have
and
to figure
Philip
out the
and John and
yeah,
Mike.
let's do it. All right. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today, and happy reading. Have a great rest of your
Happy
day.
reading, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.